When I was a child, my family moved to a big old two-floor house with big empty rooms and creaking floorboards. Both my parents worked, so I was often alone when I came home from school. One early evening when I came home, the house was still dark. I called out, "Mum," and heard her sing-song voice say, "Yeez," from upstairs. I called her again as I climbed the stairs to see which room she was in, and again got the same "Yeez" reply. We were decorating at the time, and I didn't know my way around the maze of rooms, but she was in one of the far ones, right down the hall. I felt uneasy, but I figured that was only natural, so I rushed forward to see my mum, knowing that her presence would calm my fears, as a mother's presence always does. Just as I reached for the handle of the door to let myself into the room, I heard the front door downstairs open, and my mother call, "Sweetie, are you home?" in a cheery voice. I jumped back, startled, and ran down the stairs to hear. But as I glanced back from the top of the stairs, the door to the room slowly opened at a crack. For a brief moment, I saw something strange in there, and I don't know what it was, but it was staring at me. A man went to a hotel and walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman at the desk gave him his key and told him that on the way to his room, there was a door with no number that was locked, and no one was allowed in there. Especially, no one should look inside the room, under any circumstances. So he followed the instructions of the woman at the front desk, going straight to his room and going to bed. The next night, his curiosity would not leave him alone about the room with no number on the door. He walked down the hall to the door and tried the handle. Sure enough, it was locked. He bent down and looked through the wide keyhole. Cold air passed through it, chilling his eye. What he saw was a hotel bedroom, like his, and in the corner was a woman whose skin was completely white. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door. He stared in confusion for a while. He almost knocked on the door out of curiosity, but decided not to. This disinclination saved his life. He crept away from the door and walked back to his room. The next day, he returned to the door and looked through the wide keyhole. This time, all he saw was redness. He couldn't make anything out besides a distinct red color, unmoving. Perhaps the inhabitants of the room knew he was spying the night before and had blocked the keyhole with something red. At this point, he decided to consult the woman at the front desk for more information. She sighed and said, "Did you look through the keyhole?" The man told her that he had, and she said, "Well, I might as well tell you the story. A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in that room, and her ghost haunts it. But these people were not ordinary. They were white all over, except for their eyes, which were red." This happened a city over from where I live. A woman was convicted of cutting an unborn baby from its mother's womb. The attacker was a former nurse and posted an ad to sell baby clothes. The 7th-month pregnant woman who answered the online ad was beat and stabbed, and the attacker cut into her uterus and removed the fetus. The whole reason for this attack was that the ex-nurse had been going along with a ruse saying she was pregnant, and her partner believed her. So after the attack, the ex-nurse's partner came home to take her to a doctor's appointment and saw she was covered in blood. She claimed she miscarried, while the stabbed victim was unknowingly in the couple's basement. Not knowing the victim was in the basement, the partner took the attacker and the baby to the hospital, where I believe the baby died. The victim who was cut open was able to call 911 and survived the attack. Even after all of this trauma, the nurse tried to claim that the 7th-month pregnant woman attacked her first, so she fought back in self-defense, was worried she hurt her, and then cut the baby out of the mother to try to save it. It was a super shocking story in that city. I believe the attacker was sentenced to 100 or so years in prison. Scott was a quiet boy around the age of 9. He lived with his mother and didn't really have any friends. His mom would work late most nights, and Scott was forced to stay home alone. His mom would often come home to find him still awake and very frightened. She knew that she needed to do something, but she couldn't afford a babysitter, and her son didn't have any friends that would let him stay the night. One day, Scott's mom was in town running errands when she noticed a pet store. She thought maybe getting a pet for her son would help him cope with having to be alone so much. She stepped inside, and after a bit of wandering around, she began to look at the puppies. They were all very cute, but also quite expensive. She ended up getting a somewhat timid but loving mutt that was well in her price range. When she introduced the puppy to Scott, she told her son, "Whenever you feel afraid, just let the puppy lick your hand, and you'll feel better." Her son loved the puppy, and it seemed to help with his anxiety when his mother was working. One night, Scott was home alone and was getting ready for bed. His mother was working very late tonight, so he wasn't going to bother waiting up for her. Once he was in his pajamas, he put the puppy next to him on the floor before climbing into bed. He reached down and let the puppy lick his hand before turning out the lights and falling asleep. He had woken up in the middle of the night with a full bladder. The still darkness of his room unsettled him, so he reached down to his puppy and let it lick his hand before getting out of bed and walking to the bathroom. However, when he reached the bathroom, the door was open and the light was on. This unsettled him a little because he didn't remember leaving the light on, and it was still too early for his mother to be home. He swallowed hard before cautiously approaching the bathroom. When he entered, he immediately noticed a strange smell that he couldn't identify. He looked around to try and identify what the source of the smell. Finally, he opened the shower curtains to find his puppy slaughtered in the bathtub, with a message on the wall written in his puppy's blood that read, "People lick too."